My name is Mark. I'm 29 years old. When my cousin and her husband hit hard times, I let them stay at my place, assuming it was temporary. Instead, they treated me like a built-in babysitter while they got back on their feet. When I said no, they called me inconsiderate. The moment I handed over the keys to my apartment, I felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. My name is Jake, and I'm 28 years old. I've always been the kind of guy who prides himself on being there for family, no matter what. My stepsister, Emily, and her husband, Mark, have always been close to me, even if our relationship was built on the foundation of our parents' marriage rather than blood. Emily, with her bright smile and infectious laugh, and Mark, the ever-optimistic entrepreneur, had always been the life of any family gathering. When I heard they lost their home due to a business venture gone wrong, my heart sank for them. Without a second thought, I offered them my apartment. It was a modest place, but it had enough room for them and their 2-year-old daughter, Lily. I figured it would be temporary, just until they got back on their feet. As I handed over the keys, Emily hugged me tightly, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Jake, you're a lifesaver," she whispered, her voice catching in her throat. Mark clapped me on the back, his hand heavy with the weight of his promise. "We'll find a way to repay you soon." I smiled, feeling good about my decision, but little did I know this act of kindness would soon turn my life upside down. What could possibly go wrong with helping family? The first few days were filled with the usual chaos of moving in. Lily's wee laughter echoed through the apartment, a sound that was both heartwarming and a reminder of the new reality. Emily and Mark were adjusting, trying to make the best of the situation. But the first few weeks went smoothly. Emily and Mark were respectful, keeping the place tidy and even cooking dinner for me as a thank you. Lily was a bundle of joy, her laughter echoing through the apartment, bringing a warmth I hadn't realized I was missing. However, as weeks turned into months, I noticed a shift. Emily and Mark started leaving earlier and coming back later, often with excuses about job interviews or meetings with potential investors. One evening, after a long day at work, I came home to find Lily alone in the living room, playing quietly with her toys. Emily and Mark were nowhere to be seen. When they finally returned hours later, they seemed surprised to see me. "We thought you'd be out late," Emily said, her voice tinged with annoyance. I shrugged it off, but the pattern continued. They were increasingly absent, leaving Lily with me more often than not. I started to feel like I was not just a host, but an unpaid babysitter. The situation escalated one night when I returned home unexpectedly early due to a canceled meeting. The apartment was eerily quiet. Lily was asleep in her crib, and the living room was in disarray. There were empty wine bottles on the coffee table, and the air was thick with the scent of something more than just alcohol. I heard muffled voices coming from the bedroom, and as I approached, the sounds became clearer. It was Emily and Mark, but they weren't alone. I stood there, frozen, as the reality of what was happening behind that door hit me like a ton of bricks. My stepsister and her husband, whom I had welcomed into my home, were engaging in activities that were far from appropriate for a family. One Saturday morning, after another night of being left with Lily, I decided to address the situation. I found Emily and Mark in the kitchen discussing something in hushed tones. Clearing my throat, I asked, "Can we talk about the childcare situation?" Emily's face hardened. "What about it?" she snapped. "I thought this was temporary. I didn't sign up to be Lily's full-time caretaker," I explained, trying to keep my voice calm. Mark jumped in. "Jake, we're trying to rebuild our lives. We need this time to focus on our future. Your family. We thought you'd understand." The air grew tense. "I do understand, but this isn't what I agreed to. I have my own life to live," I countered. Emily's eyes narrowed. "So you're saying you're too selfish to help your own family?" The accusation stung, but I held my ground. "It's not about selfishness, it's about boundaries. I've been more than accommodating, but you both seem to forget that I have my own responsibilities, my own dreams." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, Jake, we're grateful, really, but we're in a bind here. We need to secure our future, and that means we need to focus on our business opportunities. And what about Lily? I pressed, my voice rising slightly. She's not just a responsibility you can pass off when it's convenient. She's your daughter, and she deserves more than being left with me every night. Emily's expression softened for a moment, but then her defenses went back up. We're doing what we can, Jake. You know how hard it's been for us. I know, and I've been here for you, but at what cost? I felt the frustration bubbling up. I've put my life on hold, my career, my social life. And for what? To be a stand-in parent while you two entertain yourselves? The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken truths. I could see the guilt flicker in their eyes, but also the resolve to continue as they had been. I'm not saying I won't help. The argument left a bitter taste in my mouth. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the apartment was icy. Emily and Mark avoided me, and when they did speak, it was with a cold politeness that felt worse than silence. I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't continue living like this, feeling like a stranger in my own home. One evening, while they were out, I started packing my things. I had a friend, Alex, who had offered me a couch to crash on until I figured out my next move. As I packed, I found the lease agreement. An idea struck me. If they thought I was selfish, maybe it was time to show them what real selfishness looked like. I pulled out the lease agreement and read through it carefully. There was a clause about early termination, but it required mutual consent from all parties. I chuckled bitterly. Mutual consent? They hadn't shown much of that lately, but then another clause caught my eye. One about subletting. I could sublet my portion of the apartment to someone else, but I'd need their approval. Or I could just leave, and they'd be stuck with the full rent. That would teach them, wouldn't it? As I pondered this, I felt a mix of anger and guilt. Was I really about to abandon my family, leave them in a lurch? But then, hadn't they already left me in one? I remembered the nights I spent alone with Lily, the countless times I had to cancel plans or work late because they were out, doing who knows what. I decided to call Alex. Hey, remember your offer for a place to crash? I might need it sooner than I thought. Alex's voice was warm, a stark contrast to the chill in my apartment. Of course, man. You're welcome anytime. What's going on? I explained the situation, my voice low, not wanting to wake Lily, who was asleep in the next room. I'm thinking about subletting my part of the lease or just leaving. There was a pause on the other end. That's a big step, Jake. You sure you want to go? The next morning, I waited until Emily and Mark were both home. I laid out the lease agreement on the kitchen table, along with a note. I've signed over the lease to you. Here's the next month's rent, unpaid. Consider this my final act of kindness. Their faces went from confusion to shock as they read my note. You can't do this, Mark exclaimed, but I was already at the door. I just did. Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to be taken for granted, I said, my voice steady, but my heart racing. I walked out, leaving behind the life I had known, the apartment I had loved, and the family I had tried to help. As I closed the door, I heard Emily's voice. Jake, wait! But I didn't turn back. The weight of my decision settled on my shoulders as I made my way to Alex's place. Each step felt like a declaration of independence, a reclaiming of my own life. But with each step, the guilt gnawed at me. Was I abandoning Lily? Was I punishing Emily and Mark too harshly for their mistakes? I arrived at Alex's, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. He greeted me with a knowing look. You did what you had to do, Jake. They'll figure it out. You can't keep sacrificing your life for theirs. I nodded, but the words felt hollow. I knew I had to move on, to find my own path again. But the thought of Lily, her innocent laughter now a distant memory, made my heart ache. Days turned into weeks, and I threw myself into work, into rebuilding my social life, into anything that would keep my mind off the apartment, off Emily and Mark, and especially off Lily. But the silence from them was deafening. No calls, no messages, Nothing. One evening, as I was settling into my new routine, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat, hoping it was Emily or Mark reaching out. But it was a message from the landlord, informing me that Emily and Mark had vacated the apartment, leaving it in a state of disarray. Days turned into weeks, and I settled into Alex's place, finding a new rhythm to my life. I missed Lily, her laughter, and even the good times with Emily and Mark, but I didn't regret my decision. It was necessary for my sanity and self-respect. One evening, as I was about to head out for dinner with Alex, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. "Jake, we're sorry. We didn't realize how much we were asking of you. Can we talk?" I stared at the message, feeling a mix of relief and caution. I stared at the message, feeling a mix of relief and caution. Maybe they had learned something from this ordeal. Maybe I had too. I replied, "Let's meet for coffee next week. We have a lot to discuss." As I walked out into the evening, I wondered if they still thought I was the selfish one. But more importantly, I realized that sometimes standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. The days leading up to our meeting were filled with a nervous anticipation. I couldn't help but replay the moments in my head, the nights I spent alone with Lily, the times I felt like an unpaid babysitter, and the moment I discovered Emily and Mark's indiscretions. When the day of our meeting arrived, I chose a quiet coffee shop, one where we could talk without being overheard. Emily and Mark were already there when I walked in. They looked different, more subdued, perhaps humbled by the situation they found themselves in after I left. We exchanged awkward greetings, and after ordering our drinks, the conversation began. Emily started, her voice softer than I remembered. "Jake, we've had time to think about everything. We were wrong to take advantage of your kindness. We've been selfish, and we're sorry." Mark nodded, his usual confidence replaced by a quiet sincerity. "We've moved out of the apartment. We're staying with Mark's parents now, trying to get back on our feet. We didn't handle things well, and we owe you an apology." I listened, the weight of their words settling around us. "I appreciate the apology," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But it's not just about, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. If you enjoyed this story, this will help us create more engaging stories for you.